So lots of folks are getting ready to do their first jump. They've got a plan and maybe even a date. And I was thinking there's a way to sort of prep people where the information that they give you on the drop zone is complemented in a way that will prepare you on a different level. The headspace stuff is vital. So you can understand what you're getting into in terms of the parachute system and your exit procedures and your free fall body position. Your TI or your tandem instructor will be able to give you that information. But the layer of it that they may not have the time or take the time to get into is what I wanted to get into today. So first of all, everybody's nervous before their first jump. So you can sort of set aside the shame or the feeling of that you should be calmer or whatever. And don't worry about that. It's normal. So given that stuff, there's things that you can do to soften your fear. And what several of them are, sort of going in, everybody does. When you get nervous, that you don't breathe well. That you hold tension in your body. Maybe you're hyperactive in terms of your motions. You tap your knee or you stare into space. These are all normal human behaviors. And so the first thing I would say is do the opposite. So if you were to play the part of a relaxed person, how would you do that? You would breathe bigger. You would breathe slower. And don't overanalyze the way you breathe too much. Just prioritize slowing it down and making it larger. Use the full capacity of your lungs. And I'm not just talking about when you're in free fall. As you're preparing yourself, you're, sitting around waiting for your turn to go up on your first jump. Rather than pacing or surfing on your phone or distracting yourself, I think it's a good idea to just be with it, be with the emotion, to slow yourself down and notice the state of your body and relax your muscles as you expand and slow down your breathing. Sort of notice, where am I? I'm holding, my shoulders are uptight, and so I kind of relax them. My feet are tight, my hands are clenched. I'm feeling an urge to think and to talk nervously, at a high speed. Do the opposite, right? Slow down, empty your mind. Be okay with silence. That's where the opportunity always lies, is in between the thoughts. The content of our minds is how we can take ourselves off track. And so you're in a prep mode, being between now and your first jump. You're preparing yourself in every possible way. And one of those things is to become more comfortable with silence, more comfortable with the spaces between your ideations, your visualizations of what could happen or what you think it's going to be like. You're going to have to adapt to everything as it is in the flow of the moment. But right now, the moment is you sitting there getting ready. So you kind of calm your mind right now, clear it out, and breathe big in slowly and relax. And slowly exhale. Don't dump the exhale. That's called dumping the exhale. And there's nothing wrong with, sort of one to kind of shake it off. I often find when I'm nervous, if I can just kind of move my body and I'm nervous, and meet it where it is. It's high energy. So you can't just instantly dissolve that adrenaline, but you can sort of meet up with it where it is, get back in your body and inhale slowly and just soften it and slow it and relax and be here now in this moment as it is. And kind of get into that state of mind that is peaceful, that is graceful. And with that idea of grace, move gracefully. You're waiting to jump and they say, well, you got to do this. You got to, pick out a jumpsuit, or I got to sign a waiver, all that stuff. Do it slower. Just like when you board the aircraft, move onto the plane slowly with full awareness of everything you're doing and exaggerate the slowness, so that you can expand your awareness, right? Expand your awareness of what you're doing so you do it better, so that you put on your seatbelt correctly and you sit in a way that's comfortable for you. And you solve problems little by little as they come up, one at a time. And then you return back to this state of sort of graceful, peaceful relaxation and acceptance of the moment as it is, acceptance of the situation as it is in every possible way. So that's a piece of it. But it's not going to be done once you do it. You relax yourself, you go, oh, I'm nervous again. That's perfectly normal. I think of it as like pushing back the cuticle. Our bodies do certain things. Your hair gets long and you got to cut it back. That's something we have to do with our stress. And that comes from a realization that we're not feeling good, that we're feeling that acceleration and that feeling of being uncomfortable and out of control. And so we bring back in that high watermark that we achieved through clearing our minds, all the contemplative activities that you engage in, whether it's yoga or walking in the forest. That's one of the things I like, especially if you can take off your shoes and be barefoot. You take a hot bath and listen to groovy music or something. That's the high watermark for your inner peace. But you got to remember that. You got to remember that feeling so that you compare back to that in your skydive at all phases of it. There's the that's a tricky word. The preparatory part of it, getting ready, checking gear and making sure that everything's truly ready in every way. And then there's the riding to altitude part, which is, you're sort of, again, resetting yourself in this process where you decide, well, I've done everything there is to do. I'm just sitting on the plane waiting to get to jump altitude. This is an opportunity to change the way that this experience goes. So you relax and you breathe again and you soften yourself again and you get back into this sort of, kind of eager joy, instead of the feeling of helplessness that causes all of us to kind of fall apart. We lose our skills and we lose our awareness of our body. It's very, very common that people are in free fall, just so out to lunch that their instructors give them a signal of some kind and they don't respond. That's one of the things that fear does. And so I think it's extremely valuable to recognize what it feels like when you feel awesome, when you feel peaceful, when you feel empowered and in balance in every way, that your mind is moving at the speed that you can sort of, you're keeping up with the situation and you're not trying to move so fast that the brain can't keep up, right? So the body can't go too fast. So you slow down all your emotions and keep comparing back to this feeling of peace, of inner peace. That's what's going to allow you to do this thing that is, up to this chapter in human history, impossible. You can't jump out of an airplane and survive. And yet, if you understand the gear, if you understand yourself, if you know how to fly your body, how to fly the parachute, how to look for the next thing, I'm at this altitude in this situation. What do I need to do now at each step of the way? So that mental map is vital. And so you get that clarified, flowing, it's like a flow chart of what's going to happen at each stage of it. First, you get it in chunks, where the instructor says, all right, well, the first thing is we're going to get in the plane. You're not going to be harnessed to me yet, or you're going to be seat belted. There's different, some differences from one drop zone to the next. But if you were just to sort of, hear all those pieces, we get to the door and then we do this, and I want you to do this with your hands. And as we get in the door, I want you to look here, have your head back. We're going to say, ready, set, go. And what is that going to look like? Of course, you don't know what it's going to feel like, but at least you'll know the geometry of the body position, the orientation of that body position to the relative wind so that you're stable when you leave. What is it going to feel like when you first jump out? A surprise that most people find is that, on your first jump, normally when you leave the airplane, there's this kind of feeling. And a lot of it is projection. We expect it's going to be like that roller coaster that goes up over a hill and then back down. And it's not. You actually are just sort of surrendering to zero G's when you first leave. So there's no acceleration really in that regard in terms of our middle ear, right? That is mostly a projection of expectation and an adrenaline surge, right? So that your body, getting all these chemicals that give you power, give you the ability to act And so if you were to observe your experience on exit as you do more and more jumps, you realize actually nothing happens at all. And if you exit and really relax yourself, you can slow your heart rate down as you're leaving. You can expand your awareness, drop your blood pressure. You can increase your physical capabilities to do the subtle things that allow you to be not just stable, but to go where you want to go as soon as you're in the airflow, as soon as you leave the aircraft. There's studies that prove that highly experienced jumpers, when they leave the plane, actually have a drop in heart rate and blood pressure. They become sort of in this almost meditation state. But at the beginning, where you are, not so much, and that's fine. You just have to accept that. It's not about being without fear. You haven't done it before. Of course, you're going to have fear. The question is, do you dwell on it? Or do you dwell on the visualization of what you want to do? As you exit the airplane, you're going to arch. You're going to stick your hip bones forward and sweep your knees back and your shoulders back and your chin up and back, so that your body, as if it's kind of laying in a big salad bowl. You just kind of relax into that body position. It'll orient itself belly to the relative wind, which at first is flying forward because the airplane's going forward at like 100 miles an hour. So you're going to kind of take this arcing path that'll take about 12 seconds to reach vertical falling direction. And the acceleration goes up to about 120 miles an hour, and then it coasts. It just stays at that after about 12 seconds. You're at what we call terminal velocity. And after that, it's about 5.5 seconds per 1,000 feet. There is some variance from person to person, depending on your body type and your body position. Even the field elevation can affect that a little bit. So if you're at a higher drop zone, it might be a little shorter free fall, just a little bit. And so when you get yourself out into free fall, the first thing that everybody does is they look down, they get stiff. Some of them swim, and not everybody, which is natural, right? You're in a situation where you're in zero gravity, you're not touching anything. Well, of course, naturally, the body will swim, rope for control. The only control you have is in your mind is, this similar experience of swimming, but it doesn't help to swim. Assuming the correct balanced body position, right? The posture that is going to allow you to fall straight down in a balanced way. But if you're stiff, you bounce all around. You're going to swing all around, and maybe you swim, you can even flip over. But if you relax in an arch position, if you really relax your muscles, don't fight against the air, you do have to push your feet out just a little bit so that your knee angle is a little wider than 90 degrees, just a little bit, so you feel a little bit of wind on the front of your shins, just a little. And you just hold that position still, but not stiff. And as you fall, once in a while, you should be checking your altimeter, looking at the horizon, getting a sense of whether we're turning, what direction are we pointing. Try to expand your awareness while you're in free fall. Notice clouds and buildings. Maybe you can see your house from here, get a sense of what's going on and where you are, right, in free fall. It's one of the awareness drills that we always need to do. When you're in free fall, you may have jumped out of the airplane in exactly the right location, upwind of the target, so the wind helped you to come home. But to recognize that you're not in that location, maybe you're off of the wind line, maybe you're really deep, really far up the wind line, which is fine when it's windy, but it's not so fine when there's no wind or light wind. You need to know that stuff so that you recognize your priorities once the parachute is open, that you may have a pressing need to fly in a specific direction so you can get home. So that awareness of your drop zone is really helpful. And if you know where you're going to jump, go to Google Maps, right? Maps.google.com or Google Earth, and have a really clear look at all angles of the drop zone. From a few thousand feet up, what does it look like? What does it look like to the north, to the south, to the east, to the west? All right, get an idea of what the alternative landing areas look like. So working towards the pilot mentality, right? The pilot's job is to fix things, not to go into denial. You have to immediately recognize you got a problem and you fix the problem. You just keep fixing things until the altimeter says 0. That's your job. And you just have to trust that if you keep breathing, you stay relaxed, you're going to be absolutely fine. You're just going to keep fixing these things little by little, one thing at a time, with a relaxed mindset, trusting yourself. You've survived this long, above ground for all these years, and you've been dodging bullets. That's no small thing. Not being dead is no small thing. It improves your concept. It proves your competence. So your confidence in yourself can sort of lean on that a little bit, right? Knowing that you've dealt with near miss situations in many different aspects of life. Trust that. You just sort of relax into the experience, knowing that you're powerful and smart and able to think on your feet, and also recognize that your mood is a sliding scale of possibility. And on one end of that spectrum, there's just too much fear, too much stress, too much internal speed, and not enough awareness. And we tend to jump to conclusions. We get very sort of prejudicial. I'm in trouble with my tongue today. So you sort of expect certain things based on a fear state of mind. When you're in a high heart rate, when you're in a sort of accelerated mode with your actions and your thoughts, you're going to be going into these, worst case scenario things, way in sort of disproportionate percentages of what's likely to occur. But I think it's wise in your visualization to look into the things that maybe would need a solution, and also recognize that you should only do that, 5 or 10% of the time at the very most. And the rest of the time, you need to visualize the perfect exit. You have to visualize complete altitude awareness when you're in free fall, checking your altimeter once per 1,000 feet. You look over it. If you don't read it, then you take a second and you look again. And you hold a symmetrical body position the best that you can. You stay as relaxed as much as you can. And when it's time to open the parachute, maybe your tandem instructor will help you out with that, and pull the drogue release handle we call the ripcord. Or maybe they'll give you the opportunity to do that. That's up to them. And once the canopy opens, there's a little bit of force, but it's not 10 Gs. We're talking about, doubling your weight a little bit. So you kind of hang low in the harness, kind of resist it a little bit in terms of flexing your lower body so the leg straps don't hurt. And as soon as the canopy's open, look up and be aware. It is a little hard to see the parachute when you're hanging under a tandem system. But if you kind of lift your knees and sit down a little bit, you can even scoot your leg straps forward just a little bit. So it's more comfortable than compared to like hanging with your legs straight down. That's kind of hard on you. Look at the parachute and get a sense of, what does it look like? It is possible that it won't be right. It's possible that the instructor will need to do things to maintain the heading initially or to inflate the parachute the rest of the way. There might even be line twists. They're not a big deal. That's normal to occasionally get line twists on the parachute. They usually sort themselves out. And if they don't, there's a cutaway handle that the instructor is responsible for on the right side of the harness and a reserve ripcord on the left side of the harness. So there'll be a cutaway and a reserve. It's not your job on a tandem to pull those handles, but I think it'll make you feel better knowing that they're there, knowing that there's an automatic activation device on the rig just in case. If nobody pulls anything, at least you're going to get a parachute over your head. That's a pretty cool thing. And so as you're preparing yourself for this, I think it's vital to understand more about the system. So when you're getting briefed, look at the rigs, make sure that they actually show you not just the tandem harness system, but the whole tandem system. Look at the altimeter and get a sense of, what to expect. Understand your key altitudes. When you're going to exit, obviously, when you're going to pull, what does the pattern look like as you fly the parachute? Just like an airplane, you fly a pattern that has 90-degree turns more or less, but every instructor is a little different in how they approach it. But as a student, you're going to be expected to fly a fairly boxy shaped pattern, a downwind leg where you go with the wind, where you go a little bit past the target usually, and then a turn to 90 degrees across the wind line, and then a final approach turn 90 degrees towards the wind line to minimize your ground speed. And of course, the landings are a lot better if you have that stuff sorted out. And of course, then there is a flare. And so one of the things that we're going to do for on every jump is practice the flare for landing, where you pull both toggles down. And it is hard to pull toggles on a tandem parachute compared to a solo. It's a lot more toggle pressure is what we call that. So just going to sort of keep that in mind. And when you pull the toggles down, hopefully the instructor will give you toggles to steer the canopy with them. There's multiple loops on a tandem system, so you both can hold the right toggle together and it turns to the right. You pull both of them and you feel like you get heavy. And you get heavy because you're actually adding lift to the parachute and you're changing direction of flight from down and forward to just forward. And in that round out process, and we call it a flare, we're capable of slowing down our downward speed to almost zero and our forward speed to pretty slow, maybe 5 miles an hour. And if the wind is 5 miles an hour, you're stopped. So we have the capability of slowing down the progress quite low. If there's no wind or light wind, you're probably going to have some forward speed on landing. As a skydiving student, we're going to teach you how to roll. But as a tandem student, we're going to have you lift your feet up, right, up by your hips, nice and high out in front of you. And that means that you won't land first. We don't want you to land first. On a tandem pair, if the person in the front hits the ground first and doesn't run, we face plant on top of the tandem student. So we really need you to lift your feet. Here's the thing. That is essential for sort of high ground speed landings where you lift your feet and either they run or, and then they'll have you run if it's a really good landing. But if you've got ground speed, you lift your feet, you slide in on the tandem instructor's butt, and then your butt will come down second, and you just kind of slide along the ground until it comes to a stop. And that's fine. That's fine because it's just forward motion, not downward. And you will develop a habit, especially if you do more than one tandem jump. As you flare the parachute, as you pull the toggles down, your feet naturally go up in front of you. Problem is when you're alone, when you're on a solo jump, this increases the chances of a butt strike landing. When you're with a tandem instructor, you're not going to have a hard landing because they don't want to land hard. This is a highly experienced jumper. But you're all on your own and you might screw up your flare a little bit in the first jump. That's fine if you have your feet under your body. So you have to break that habit once you go from tandem jumping to solo jumping to kind of pull your feet back underneath your body as you're hitting the brakes for landing. And that is sort of counter to the inertia inherent in the system, right? When you hit the brakes, you're adding drag to the parachute, it moves back. And that's what gives you your lift because the wing is now more nose high, like you pull back on the yoke of an airplane, right? The nose comes up, it gets more lift. But it also causes the suspended load to swing forward and the feet really get a significant push forward unless you resist it, unless you lift your knees and bring your feet back underneath your body. And then you're able to roll out your landing. Or if everything works well, some people do stand up within their first few jumps on their landing on a solo. Not everybody, and I think it's wise to plan to roll on your first landing just in case. A PLF, we call it a parachute landing fall, is a wonderful thing. To stand up feels good to the ego. It keeps you from getting grass on you, but trying to stand up a landing that you shouldn't try to stand up is how you get hurt. So practice rolling in a variety of ways. Go to a yoga class, go to an Aikido class and learn how to roll. To move your body in all different ways so that you're flexible and adaptable, regardless of the landing. Now, staying strong and flexible is a big part of it, but also knowing how to deflect that energy, turn linear energy into rotational energy. You're far less likely to get hurt. And you can walk away from a landing that wasn't so perfect and giggle about it and learn from it and move forward, because that's what makes you a good skydiver is profiting from your experiences, both sort of soft landings and not so soft landings. They're all useful. It's all part of your library in your brain that helps you to make good choices in the sky. So I hope this helps in preparing you for your first tandem jump. I look forward to working with all of you, either in person or online. On Mighty Networks, I do live group meetings 3 times a week. So I'll put a link in the bottom of this video so that you guys can join if you're interested, whether you're preparing for your first jump or you've got lots of jumps. There's always more to learn. And I want to do my best to help protect you from the bad days that potentially can happen in skydiving. With enough information and the right attitude, there's no reason why you can't continue jumping until you're 80 or 90 years old. And so that's why I do what I do, because I love you guys. I love skydivers, and I love the people that are thinking about skydiving. And the truth is, I love everybody everywhere, even the people that think that skydivers are crazy. But I'm just doing my part to try to sort of reduce the chances that people are going to have a day with regrets. And that is possible for you. So thank you very much for swinging by. I hope you have a great day.
Your parachute is an airfoil. The front of that parachute is open, so the air can ram into it. Why does the air ram into it? Because the suspension lines, the lines of the parachute, are rigged so that the nose lines, the front of the parachute, is lower than the back. More than anything, because we need this downward slope to create forward progress. And the forward progress is what, number one, gives the internal pressurization of the wing, which creates this envelope. The air doesn't leak out of the back of the canopy, right? It's sewn shut. So you have a bunch of ribs, you got a top and a bottom, and it's sewn shut. So it's a bunch of sleeping bags, right? So as the thing pressurizes, you create rigidity and stability from that, but also you have now a wing shape. Let's change colors here. So now what happens is, as you fly through the air, you're bending the air. And as the air bends over the top of the wing, it creates lift, which results in glide. So the wing glides at approximately a 3-to-1 glide ratio on a tandem canopy. So for every 1,000 feet you go down, you go 3,000 feet forward. So that's kind of cool. So that allows you to go an awfully long way. If you're open at, say, 4,000 feet, fully inflated and flying, well, you can go a long way. So that's nice, especially with a tailwind, because that extends the distance across the ground, which is why we jump out of the airplane upwind of the target in most cases, not directly over the top. So this wing glides on its own, but it also has control lines attached to the very back of the canopy, going through guide rings on the rear risers, the back straps. You got a front and rear riser straps that attach to the 3-ring releasable system at the base. Then you have steering toggles, and tandem systems have more than one loop, one for you and one for the instructor, which is quite cool. And so some of the instructors will give you the toggles so that you can help them steer, and they might even let you do it on your own. Just like, turn to the right. And the way you turn to the right, as you might guess, is you pull down the right one. Well, the way it works is very simply put. Get my eraser out here, although that was an awfully nice drawing, I must say. So from a bottom view, your wing is essentially this sort of wide thing. The truth is, it's actually, let's be more honest, so you can get a real clear picture of what this thing looks like. It is slightly curved. So this is a top view or a bottom view. So as the parachute flies in this direction, you have brake lines that attach to the back of the canopy. And those come down to your steering handles. So if I pull down on the right side, I add drag to that side, it slows that side down, and I turn towards the side that is pulled. If I put on the brakes on both of them, as the title might suggest, I don't just slow down like in a car, I get more lift. And the reason why I get more lift is because I'm adding drag to the wing, my body swings in front, and now consequently I'm at a higher angle of attack. In other words, the angle of my wing to the relative wind, which is the wind caused by my motion through the air, is more nose high. So just like pulling back on the yoke of an airplane, right, back on the stick of some airplanes, I'm able to now nose up, produce more lift, and change my direction of flight. And so that's what we do for landing, is we flare. That's the term. So